Hey guys, we are on sketch number 3. This one is going to be in color, so we're going with the fall season kind of theme here. What we're going to be doing is a pumpkin. So again, I'm trying to pick objects that are relatively easy to draw and that you can have your drawing be a little bit off and still look okay, because pumpkins are all sort of shapes and sizes. So as long as you're in the right spot and as long as you shade it well, this should come out looking nice. So I want you guys to kind of follow along with how I'm going to teach you how to draw this. I know you guys know like how to draw a pumpkin, or at least maybe you think you do, but I want everyone to back up a little bit when they draw and start thinking of overall layout before they get to details. Like, for example, a lot of people, I think, go straight to like doing bumps on a pumpkin, or they draw the stem coming up the top. But you got to plan ahead a little bit first. So what you're going to do is, on your sheet of paper, we're just going to do really, really lightly, okay, just a circle-ish shape for the size of the overall pumpkin. Okay, so hopefully you can see this. I'm doing this pretty lightly. But we're going to just edit that shape once you have it on there. That way we know we can fit everything. I did mine a little to the left because we're going to have the cast shadow to the right, so make this sort of off-center. So again, just, it doesn't have to be perfect. This is by no means perfect. I'll do mine a little darker so you can see it better. Okay, and again, pumpkins are not perfect circles, so it's probably better if it's not perfect. Okay, from there, we're going to add the stem. Now, like I said, people usually draw stems off the top, but if we're looking down on this, this is the top of the pumpkin, so the stem is in the center of the top. So, and again, it doesn't have to be perfect, so usually we'll start with like an oval for where it kind of dents in there, and then these can kind of come up. It's up to you if you want to make your stem really long or kind of short. A lot of times they curve. This is all stuff that you can sort of customize, but that's about what you're looking for. Okay, now we can start working on some of those bumps, the texture of the pumpkin. So you can follow along exactly with mine, or you can customize it, and this is where we're going to be messing our overall shape up a little bit. So all these bumps kind of come in towards the middle of the pumpkin to the stem, so we're going to bump out from there. Okay, we're going to cut up our shape a little bit. So see, I'm going beyond, and then I'm kind of curving back in a little bit. So all these little bumps are going to make a new outer edge for our pumpkin. As you start to move around, these are going to start turning the other direction. So I'm coming out, and I'm hitting the one before it. Okay, this I'm just going to stop. They can all be slightly wider than others, so once I feel like I've got a good distance on them, I kind of curl it back in, and we can adjust that later. Okay, once we get to these ones on the sides, actually that doesn't look good. So if something looks wrong, this one I think should curve. So when something doesn't look right, ask yourself what it is about it that doesn't look right. You're going to make adjustments here and there. I think it's good for you guys to see me make little mistakes, so I'm not going to stress about it. Okay, so you're going to have some fixing to do once you do this. I have a million little lines here that you can see, so I'm going to go through now so I don't confuse myself when I'm coloring, and I'm going to erase sort of that initial circle I had, because now I have new outside edges that I made with these bumps, and I'm just going to kind of clarify which lines are the ones I actually want to have and which ones I want to get rid of. Okay, and these bumps can come down like that also, so you can kind of reinforce the bumpy outer edge and bottom edge as well. Okay, see those bumps there. So it is a process, and I think that's where a lot of you struggle as students is you'll work on a drawing for like 2 minutes and then you get really frustrated if it doesn't instantly look right, but the more you draw, the more you'll realize that things usually don't instantly look right. That's a very special talent that some people can just magically have something go right the first time. But the more you practice, the more you'll see that good results do come in time, and you learn to be patient with yourself. Because you saw I had a really weird looking pumpkin for a minute there. Okay. So you should be refining yours as I'm refining mine. I'm just erasing what doesn't quite look right. Alright, pumpkin still almost looks like a little too perfectly round, but that's okay. Alright, I'm also going to, while I'm doing this, map out my cast shadow. So I'm having my light source come almost directly from the side right now. That'll give some good movement. And so that means my cast shadow is going to go pretty much directly to the side also. So something like that. And again, you can do it wrong, look at it. If it looks too wide, if it just doesn't seem like it makes sense. I always like to make things smaller than I think they need to be. I can always extend that shadow, but once I color it in, I'm kind of keeping it so. Okay. Alright, so on to the coloring. We are coloring this in crayon. So, pumpkins are orange, but again, if you look at this, there's not just one shade in there. There's some yellow oranges, there's some red oranges, so you're going to want to have a bunch of crayons pulled out and set aside. So this is what I have right now. I may be grabbing more throughout, so I have yellow oranges, oranges, red oranges. I have a green, which a lot of people might assume is for the stem, but actually it's going to help develop my shadows. I have a black, and I may take out more, but it's nice to have some ready, and it's also nice to have a scrap paper so that before you actually put it on the paper, you know what kind of orange and yellow you're working with. Like this is very lemony. I might not use this color, but it's nice to know what you're working with before you actually put it down there. Okay, so just like I do with charcoal and graphite, I like to start with my darks and work to my lights. What I'm going through now is I'm like partially erasing these lines. I don't really want to see my pencil lines when I'm done, so I'm sort of just lightening the outlines. Again, this is a sketch, doesn't have to be perfect, but I want to make it look as good as I can with the time I have. So I'm just going to soften every line I have so that I can still see them, but in hopes that they're not going to like really stand out in the final drawing. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to take this one section at a time, and if you think of it like a cylinder, like we practiced with the forms, that might help you. Okay, so it's round, so you want each thing to have a highlight on the left side of each one. Okay, I'm actually going to start with not my darkest color, but what I think is sort of like a medium dark, and I'm going to layer. Crayons actually can do some really nice things if you learn to build them up. So I always like just to get a base color in the direction of each one of these, so you're following the contour of each little segment of this pumpkin. Okay, so don't color side to side, you're coloring kind of in this arc like vertical direction. Okay, filling it up. And again, my light source is on the left. So as I move towards the left side of this segment, I'm fading it in. There's going to be a lot of building and going back and forth with colors. So you're going to have to learn to watch your results and kind of ask yourself what it needs. Okay. So I am going to work in some of my yellow-orange now. Okay, so I've got my yellow-orange. I'm going to sort of start layering in right in the middle of that so that they blend nicely. So I'm starting off pressing light. If I don't see results, I'm just going to press a little harder. I'm just working those two colors together. But again, as I get towards that left side, I'm really fading out those highlights. You really want to make sure you don't make them too dark. So slowly building to highlights. But I'm getting a richer now transition between my colors. That's the one thing that does slow you down when you start considering color versus black and white. So instead of graphite or charcoal with color, if you want it to look real, you need lots of layers and lots of different shades and tints and tones in there, so it's not nearly as fast. So this sketch, who knows, depending on how long this ends up taking me, we might stretch it into a 2-week sketch for you guys. Okay, so I've kind of filled that area in, but I want a really extreme light, so I'm actually going to move into a yellow now. So I'm going to make sure I'm grabbing that sort of orangey yellow. This one for me is called Dandelion, so if you like how mine looks, that might be one of the colors you go for. So again, I'm starting off in the middle, and I'm starting off pressing light. Okay, I don't want to like take it all over too fast. So if I see it start to come in there and I like the look of it, I'm just going to continue it, and I'm going to use this as my main highlight color. So I am going to fill this all in here. Okay. And this may not look right to you right now, but once they're all in and you have this richness of color in every section, you'll see it looks really nice. And we also actually haven't built up the shadow color either. So I started with the red orange. I'm actually going to work some red in next. Okay. Pressing hard is a good key. Any white spaces you have showing through are really going to make this look unfinished, so try to really thoroughly cover. Okay. I'm going to go through with some red now. This is just plain red, I think. Okay, and again, you can test it. And again, start real light. See the results, see if you're happy with that. Press harder if you need to. And this is only going to go on that extreme outer edge. You can have the red, the darker colors curl a little more towards the bottom, just because as the pumpkin comes down to the base, it also curls under away from the light, so you're going to have a little more shadowy colors towards the bottom. Okay. Alright, so that's one section. I'm going to move on to the rest before. I think I still will refine this a little more, but it's good to develop a whole picture before you get too sucked into too many details. Okay. The pumpkins also curl in here, so they go up and in, so that also blocks some light. So I am going to bring more of the darks into the top here as it curls away. Again, always start light, you can always add more. So having this orange against the yellow is going to create a natural line, which is why we don't need our pencil lines. You're going to see the line just from the change in color and the change in value. Okay, just like a sphere, as we get closer to the side of the light, you're going to have more highlighted sections. So this is going to fade out a little faster because now we're moving towards the side of the light. Okay, look for uneven sections. Press lighter or harder as you need to even things out. Switching back to orange. Start working that color in over the top. A lot of work, but it does pay off. So working in some yellow orange. The layering may seem unnecessary because you could say, oh, just go right to yellow and make a natural yellow orange by layering yellow on top of orange, but the more layers you put on, the more it fills in all those little white specks. So even though it may seem excessive, that extra detail and care you put into it really does make a difference in the end. So even if you're just covering up with yellow after this, it still helps to have it. So now I'm into my dandelion color. one's cramping up. Okay, now you can see I have a little couple black streaks from gunk that on my paper. It's not intentional, it's not what I wanted, but pumpkins are definitely not perfect objects, so it doesn't really bother me, because if you look at a real pumpkin, there's little nicks and divots and black spots all over them. So it actually is probably a good thing in retrospect. Okay, throw in a little bit of that deep red. I always like to save the most extreme parts for last, and I might go a little deeper with shadows, but I'll wait until the whole thing's in to go crazy. Alright, next section, same idea. We're really close to that side of the light now, so we're going to have even less of these dark colors. Oh, cramping hand. Shake it out when you need to. Okay, keep moving in the direction. Switching from red orange to orange now. Now you may feel like, okay, you got the idea of the pattern, you don't have to watch the video anymore. I do really suggest you keep this video on. I'm going to try not to talk the whole time. That way you can just kind of watch and work, because I do have some suggestions, like some finishing touches suggestions, that make a big difference. So I really hope that you guys aren't just completely shutting this off and just doing it on your own, because while you may be able to do all this, those finishing touches make such a big difference that I don't want you to lose out on that. It really makes your drawing pop. So on this extreme light section, you could leave an area for a white highlight. You could always layer on top with white also, but it's something to think about. You know, this yellow does read as a nice highlight, but if this is the most extreme left side, you might want a really extreme highlight popping forward. So something to think about. So I did leave some of that sort of white, and I think I'm going to layer over with some white also, because sometimes when it's the white of the paper, it doesn't always look like you want it to look. Okay, now we're moving around. So the back of the pumpkin does have some different shading here. You're not going to get as many extreme highlights, so we just got to keep that in mind. This one we still have some nice areas we're going to work on. Oh, so you almost grabbed the wrong crayon. Red, orange. Darkest on the right side and closest to the stem. Okay, now we're changing direction. Now we're coloring mostly horizontally, because we're coloring inside the shape of that segment. So we're fading sort of right to left horizontally here instead of vertically. Okay, switching from red orange to orange. Again, color right over what you have. That red orange will still be there, and the orange will just help make it look a little more rich. When in doubt, fade out faster than you think. You can always go back and layer in more. Yellow, orange. Dandelion, yellow. Okay. Red, I'm working mostly just into the stem corner. Okay, so now you can see, now that we have a few in there, how this is starting to look round and rich with the colors. Back to red orange. Now we can go a little heavier with red orange than we were, filling up a little more space because we're starting to work our way away from the light, but also this is the top, so it's hitting directly left. The light doesn't really jump up to the top, so this is sort of all mostly in shadow. The light can bounce off of things, but it doesn't move all on its own, so unless it's bouncing off things, you're not going to see that light hit the top too much. Red in, so as we are getting more into shadows, you can go a little heavier with this red color. Okay. This is my, oop. See, double check your colors. Make sure you got the right ones. Okay, starting to make it to the other side now. So as this pumpkin, imagine, again, it's three-dimensional, imagine it's coming up, going this way now, so you are going to get some light hitting this section a little bit. So your highlights are going to start to work their way back in a little bit. Work a little bit of that dandelion color into here. I didn't leave an empty space for it, so I'm just, ooh, I broke it. So that's how hard I'm pressing. If that helps you. Okay, always color around the edges. Crayons are really waxy, so they do mix pretty well. If you go too heavy with the red, you can always layer back over with your red orange to sort of mix them together and get rid of some of those streaks. Just gotta press real hard. Okay, so now we're in some really deep shadows over here. Okay, so this one's not gonna have a ton of highlight. Again, I'm always kind of starting with my medium dark. So I'm gonna leave some highlight area here at the topmost where maybe some light comes in and hits that topmost part, but all this is going to be pretty deep in shadow. So if you want, you can sort of mark out that highest point. Red orange, get some orange in there. I'm hoping you guys can see the results of all this color layering and can appreciate how that works for other objects, not just pumpkins. So like even skin tones. So many people think you just go out, grab like a peach or a light brown, but there are so many colors you layer in to get accurate skin tones, yellows and oranges and reds and browns and even blues and greens in some areas. Very few are, there's not very many solid plain colored things unless they're just completely fake. You're creating the illusion of depth. usually means layering a lot of colors. So again, I am going to layer in more shadow colors on these extreme sides, but I'm going to wait until the end so you guys can really see how that works. Okay, last segment. Finding my red orange. There it is. Okay, so where this bumps out here, your highlight's going to be way over here. There's my red orange, switching to orange. Switching to my yellow orange. Working it in to those other sections so it's a nice even transition. You want this to look stripey. You want these transitions to be smooth and natural. So overlapping what you already did is key for that. Okay, switching to my broken dandelion crayon. If your hand has not cramped up yet, you are not pressing hard enough, that's for sure. Okay, so there is the whole pumpkin colored in. We'll get that stem in just because it's hard to add refining details. So I'm just going to pick out a couple browns. A light one and a dark one. Again, the stem is also sort of like a cylinder. So I'm going light to dark, or dark to light. Layering in. And the stem is sort of textured and probably bumpy, so you can sort of add some areas of like lininess in here to make it look like wood. And that's the great thing about this, is it does not have to be perfectly even at all, because these stems are just totally unpredictable with their texture and their color. So as long as you sort of just fill it all in with stemmy colors, you're all right. So browns, blacks. I'm actually going to go in with sort of a deep blue. This one's actually indigo. Blues are really great for working in some shadows. May seem crazy, but if you're layering them, it doesn't always read as blue. It reads as a nice dark. And if it is too much, just layer back over with the browns. And that's actually the next step too, is with this pumpkin. Blue, or actually green, work real nice to bring in the really intense shadows. So again, start light, but if you layer in some blues and or greens, green is because green is the opposite of red, so whenever you mix two complementary colors or two opposites, what you will get is a really extreme, oh, I tried to have my red over here, an extreme dark. It's even more realistic and rich than using black. So you could use black, but it definitely is a lot more rich and interesting looking if you layer colors to get your darks rather than just opting for black. But I never was comfortable with that as a student. I always felt like black should be my shadow. So I did that as a lot as a student, but as I've gotten older, I've seen how it works And I've gotten comfortable using blues and greens and layering them in to get those extreme darks. Okay, so now what you do is you just go through and you refine, and at first using those blues and greens might look too extreme, like that might not look good to you, but the more you balance it around and get it in all the sections, it does make sense. So you gotta trust the process, get it right there where the shadow's deepest, and use it very sparingly moving out. And it really, really does make those shadows more intense and adds to the contrast of your overall drawing. Makes each segment pop out just a little bit more. So I don't know if you can see this happening here. You can always go back to another color and layer in. So if you feel like it's too much, back up, scribble over it. So again, indigo is what I'm using. Always pause and ask questions if you're not sure. It is nerve-wracking to throw in a color that you think doesn't make sense, but the only way you'll know is to try it. And again, very light. This is the one time I'm not pressing hard. Okay. So now it's looking a lot more three-dimensional, a lot more rich. This right here is popping out as weird to me, especially because it's behind the stem, so this highlight seems like a bit much. So I am going to go back through. If something looks weird to you, ask yourself why, so that you can make adjustments. Again, it's very odd that someone would get something just right the first time. So making adjustments is not only necessary, but it's the way to make things the best they can be. Okay, so I could keep doing this forever and ever and ever, but at some point I'm going to call it. Same with you guys, you know, you could spend forever trying to fix things, but keep an eye on the time so that you're not spending an infinite amount of time. You don't want to have this not be finished after putting in all this work. So keep an eye on the time. When you feel like you've done all you can do, then call it. You can always go back to it another day too, but I want to get this whole thing in before the period's over, so I will stop for now. It's something you can keep working on. Alright, so for that cast shadow, in the interest of time, I am going to go straight to black, but it could be the same thing where you build up and layer colors. So whatever this surface, this pumpkin is sitting on, so if it could be like a brown earth or whatever, green grass, you would start, if you were in a layer, start with that color and then layer up from there. But I'm just going to do straight black for now. Actually, I am going to have, sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of the color peeking through, reflecting off the ground. A lot of surfaces are kind of reflective, even if it's not a mirror or glass. You'd be surprised at how many surfaces will reflect colors. Even your skin will reflect colors. That's why in some rooms you look in the mirror and you feel like you look terrible, but it's because of your skin reflecting the walls and the skin color. Or the wall color, I just said skin color. Okay. Really important that your cast shadows are always horizontal, because they're not standing up, they are just something that's blocking light that sits on the table or the ground, and the ground should be flat. Okay, it's always going to be darkest, closest to your object, and then as you move away from it, it does start to fade and the edges of it get a little fuzzy and uneven. So I always try to fade it out kind of fast. Because then I can just layer in and darken it if I need to. And for me, when I'm making something up, if I'm not using a photo reference, even though I can think my way through the highlights and shadows a lot, cast shadows are where I always kind of get confused. I feel like they always look weird. So it's something I'm still working on. because it's black. I don't want to overdo it, which is why this is taking so long. I'm just doing it really slow and steady and adding only when I'm sure I need to add. Pressing hard only where I feel like it really needs to go darker. Okay, so you can see I'm not filling out that entire section I marked out right away because I am a little hesitant. So I'm just going to round it out here. Okay, you don't want your edges to be choppy. They can be uneven, but you want to sort of fade out that unevenness by pressing lighter and having it just slowly disappear. So try to avoid that choppy like edges. Especially if you're not sure of the shape, if you fade it out, the shape. Just put it on that way. Okay, so that's what I have in my 40 minutes. So that was pretty true to a whole period. I started a little bit late, so this is actually a 36-minute video. So I'm assuming it'll take you guys longer. I'm going to watch you guys as you work. If it seems like something we need to stretch into a 2-week sketch, then we will do that. But I will talk to you guys and get feedback first. But I'd rather you take your time, go slow, do it right. Just don't get too caught up in perfecting anything that it's something that's going to take you 10 days and you're never going to finish. So know when you've done your best and to move on and ask questions if you need to. Hopefully you came up with something that makes you proud and you've done something with crayons that you did not think crayons could do.